finally finished the main story of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and I have a lot of game left untouched. I have most of the side missions, the epilogue, some collectibles and upgrades, and most of the 2 DLCs released to date left to explore, despite having well over 50 hours into the game. With all of that in mind, let's dive into my review of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I initially started playing Valhalla on GeForce Now on my PC and phone through Ubisoft Plus for the first 3 or 4 hours of gameplay back at release. I distinctly remember being heavily invested in the intro. However, as Norway opened up, I started feeling slightly overwhelmed by it. And coming straight from Odyssey, I decided I needed a short break after rushing the main storyline to the arrival at Ravensthorpe. Without all of the abilities and equipment in the early region, it felt a bit like a step backwards from Odyssey's late game. For a new arrival to the series, or someone who hadn't just finished Odyssey and its DLC, I can see the pacing working a lot better, however.
How was my day? Well, I killed a 3-headed beast, got yelled at by Hades, and now I'm on my way to meet the ferryman of the underworld. How was yours?
After the holidays, I picked it back up on Google Stadia after a sale. The cloud save feature allowed me to pick up right where I left off, luckily, and I started exploring the main quest a bit further. The narrative is set up into several shorter arcs of a few hours each. They all introduce a new region, although all regions are seemingly accessible from the get-go, with some regional leveling of foes. The game also added progression-based leveling recently to keep things challenging as you go. I early on accidentally ran into something called a zealot, twice as powerful as me in a region way above my power level. And after what felt like 15 minutes of constant fighting, I still hadn't even gotten him below half health, so I ran away. This both made me respect the challenge these zealots are meant to be, but unfortunately also had me avoid them for quite some time. If you've played Assassin's Creed Odyssey, zealots are a bit of a mix between cultists and mercenaries, and if you haven't played any of the most 2 recent Assassin's Creed games, the easiest way for me to describe them would be to say that they are sort of mini-bosses that roam around the world. The main story arcs vary a bit in length, importance to the story as a whole, and honestly in enjoyment. Some felt like filler episodes of an anime, and others felt like grand epic sagas worthy of the skalds of Odin's feast in Valhalla. On the upside, the shorter lengths of them made sure nothing overstayed its welcome too much. The sheer number of them had me rush through a lot of them, never really stopping to really get down and dirty with all the regions. The arcs for London, Jorvik and Winchester were to me some of the highlights. They provided very different gameplay to the open countryside missions of, for example, Gloucestershire, and felt like a nice nod to the early days of the series. The search for Templars infiltrating these cities really had me engaged on another level than when replacing some Saxon Thane with a puppet in Leicestershire. Not that all of those other arcs didn't really have things going for them, because they all do, they all have their moments. But the city gameplay of these 3 main ones really felt like a mix of the olden days Assassin's Creed mixed in with the new. And speaking of gameplay, the combat is fun, but never really reaches the insane power fantasies of Odyssey's late game, for better and for worse. It's a bit more grounded in reality, while keeping the basics similar. Valhalla does play a bit more fluidly at times, and there seems to be a bit more depth to it, but honestly it never really felt like I had the time and energy to fully invest in it. And let's be honest, I do kinda miss shooting ghost arrows across forts from outside them, and using my flaming swords in Odyssey. But I gotta say, the stamina bar in combat made it a bit more interesting than its predecessor and much less button mashy. The skill tree is at first glance very intriguing, but after a deeper look, the vast size of it and the minor upgrade steps that seemingly do nothing, or at the very least very little, the high amount of skill points gained throughout the entire game, and the at times very uninspiring skills make it more busy work than fun growth. As for the stealth mechanics, they have been a bit refined, mainly with the addition of distrust areas where you need to stay hooded to avoid detection. In my opinion, the guards are still way too vigilant even in these distrust areas, there's just less guards really. And assassinating your targets is usually an affair of sneaking close, then engaging in a bit of combat, which is fine. But seeing how the initial hours of the Siege of Paris DLC does it, makes me wish the whole game did it the way the Paris DLC do. For one target in the Paris DLC, for example, I eavesdropped on a conversation in a tavern, learned the code word that I could use to just waltz right into the location of my target without the fear of the many guards. There I then found someone to squeeze from some more information on my target's whereabouts and also his routine. And I got the detail that I needed a certain cloak and a ritual to get close. I found the cloak, followed the ritual, and suddenly found myself alone with my target in a room and could easily kill him in calm secrecy, free of guards, with a quick time event. In the main game you never really feel as an assassin, but I gotta say so far in the Paris DLC you really do. Feeling like a badass Viking with assassin vibes though? Well, that's also fine. Valhalla looks and plays amazing, just what I've come to expect from the series. The Stadia release is locked at 30 FPS, which will likely put off some gamers, but as someone who's never really been much of a framerate guy anyway, after all I played Crysis 1 at a whopping 20 FPS on average for several hours before upgrading my old PC. So the fact is the lack of 60 FPS has never really been a deal breaker for me. The color palette of Valhalla is way darker, grayer and foggier compared to the vibrant Greek Odyssey, and honestly it might be a bit accurate, but it becomes a bit dull looking at times, whereas Odyssey always had me enchanted with the lush, colorful Greek world. Even the dull areas were usually quite vibrant. The modern day plot in Valhalla continues, with some familiar faces returning, much to my enjoyment, and it does tie up a lot of loose ends, while also obviously creating new ones for the franchise to later pick up on. Just hopefully it's not in a comic that most people, including me, will miss. I know a lot of gamers seem to dislike the modern day, but to me it's an important glue that connects the franchise together. At the end of the day, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is both fresh with new ideas and the old ones returning, but also more of the same from Odyssey. A lot of mechanics return, some the same, some refined, and some made slightly worse actually. The game is full of content, but also a lot of busy work. The story is a bit all over the place, but also quite interesting for the most part. Generally well written and well acted, but with the occasional dips in quality. Valhalla is far from perfect, but at the end of the day, I've had fun playing it. And as someone with very little time for games, sinking 50 hours into a game over the course of a few months, that's not something that happens often. The fact that I keep coming back to it is proof that, despite its shortcomings, it's still a good game to me. The shorter arcs meant I could usually finish the story arc in 1 or 2 sessions, despite my limited and sporadic gaming time, but I could also really dive in properly when the opportunity arose, which honestly suits my life pretty well. So, as such, I somewhat reluctantly gave Valhalla, just like I gave Odyssey, a seal of approval. No seal, not you. No, not that seal. There we go. So, with all of this out of the way, I would like to take a moment to reflect a bit on the franchise and look forward to infinity. Assassin's Creed isn't Assassin's Creed anymore. This is a statement I've seen over and over again. I think I first heard it around the Black Flag days, possibly even with Assassin's Creed 3. Black Flag is a great pirate game, but it's not a good Assassin's Creed game. It's a statement I see over and over. And Assassin's Creed Origins, Odyssey and Valhalla, with their moves towards RPG elements, has only increased the sentiment that the series is no longer Assassin's Creed. I sort of understand that. Yes, the games are no longer really stealth-focused action adventures. But here's a problem with that viewpoint. Assassin's Creed is no longer a type of game, it's a franchise. It's no longer the gameplay that defines the series, it has transitioned into the setting. Assassin's Creed has become the name for the alternate history /fantasy /sci-fi setting, with the lore and stories about the Ezio, Animus, Templars versus Assassin Orders, etc. Any game set in this world, if you will, is an Assassin's Creed game. It could be a MOBA, tower defense, a shooter, RTS game, story-based adventure, RPG, or it can be anything in between. That can all be Assassin's Creed games. Ubisoft has made Assassin's Creed into a name to slap onto games, just like Tom Clancy has become, no matter the gameplay. Whatever the gameplay you consider to be Assassin's Creedy, it may or may not be in the next one, and that is fine. As Ubisoft is now moving towards making a games as a service title in the Assassin's Creed franchise, codenamed Infinity, this point feels more important than ever. It's also why I'm quite excited for it actually. Over the years, Assassin's Creed has several times been treading a bit of water, being accused of being the same thing over and over. The franchise has continued to iterate, but usually the criticism has stuck around. The yearly releases for a while certainly didn't help. And playing through Valhalla, right after finishing Odyssey, I can already feel that feeling of it's the same thing with a different skin. Yes, several things has changed from Odyssey, but Valhalla still plays and feels quite similar. Don't change what isn't broken, I guess. and with the extensive length of the games, you'll be doing the same gameplay loop over and over. So going into Infinity, I predict a few things, some of which may be well known to be true or false by the time this video makes it past my bucket of unfinished scripts. They'll probably be making several campaigns in different settings, each campaign much shorter than most regular Assassin's Creed games, some with the same protagonist, some with different. And within these, they will likely play around with mechanics, gameplay, and possibly even co-op, multiplayer, single player. I can see Infinity serve as a hub for exploring different things, sort of like Ravensthorpe is to Valhalla. I can see them going into whole new genres within the Assassin's Creed universe. Obviously, how it's monetized will make a big part in how it lands, and on that part, the jury will be out until launch, I guess. A few rumors earlier in 2021 mentioned the Valhalla team moving on to production of a new Assassin's Creed title that was a bit closer to Uncharted than Valhalla in design, following the bodyguard of Richard Lionheart. That project was apparently put on hold to make more DLC for Valhalla, which sold very well, but I imagine it will be part of Infinity now. I can see Infinity exploring all kinds of gameplay, experimenting and visiting not only new stories, places and time periods, but all manners of mechanics and genres. Ubisoft has stated they are committed to staying true to the DNA of AC, meaning that we come with high quality narrative experiences. Reading between the lines of this quote, they are quite explicitly stating that the gameplay is not what they define as the DNA of Assassin's Creed, but rather the storyline. So I do not think we'll see Ubisoft stray away from the narrative storytelling that the series has been doing from the beginning. Either way, I'm excited for Infinity. I look forward to seeing what they can bring to the table. I do hope the game isn't ruined by bad monetization or become the same gameplay segments repeated in different settings, because more of the same isn't what Assassin's Creed should be. It's been evolving for over a decade, albeit slow at times. It's a series born in social stealth and action-adventure, and it's birthed incredible naval gameplay and several expansive open-world RPGs. And does anyone else remember the tower defense minigame of Assassin's Creed Revelations? So tell me, are you excited for Assassin's Creed Infinity? Let me know what you want to see it explore in the comments below, and let me know of your opinions of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Last year I reviewed Odyssey, so if you can't get enough of Assassin's Creed, you can always go back and watch that. Anyway, thank you for watching. It's probably time for me to go back into Valhalla. There are DLCs and side quests to play for several more months for me. But before you go, please like the video, and if you like this, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you'll be notified the next time I upload something. With me, you never really know when that is.